Pepe, many people thought that this new Cold War and its aggressive posturing from Washington towards China was a thing of the Trump administration, and that Biden would come in, things would be hunky-dory again. Of course, now we've had meetings of the Quad and the creation of this bizarre AUKUS, this alliance that Washington has created between Australia, the United Kingdom, and the United States. Where do you see this going? What is the logic, if there's any, behind this, Pepe?
No, there is an internal imperial logic, because leaving Afghanistan was part of a repositioning. So the repositioning towards where? Towards Cold War 2.0 against China. Obviously, we all know that. But how are they going to do it? Considering the, once again, to quote some of my deep state friends, the mediocre IQ level of these people who are running the US at the moment, the answer is AUKUS. Or I prefer to call it, you suck A.
Yeah.
You suck A. Well, you suck A. You know who gave away the game? I put it in one of my last columns, in fact. The Australian Minister of Defense himself. He gave away the game. He gave an interview to I think one of the Australian networks. And he talked explicitly of Perth is going to be transformed into a sort of forward base for American subs. Nuclear-powered American subs carrying nuclear weapons stationed in Perth. So that's it, you know, and it's fantastic because it didn't take any of us to come up with the scoop. We have an Australian minister giving us the scoop, you know, which obviously you won't read in American media anywhere. So this is the real non-secret of AUKUS, which is something that they discussed at that ridiculous G7 in Carbis Bay. Only the three of them. Three means actually 2.5. No? Morrison, Bojo, and that thing behind Biden that we call Biden between commas. You know, the conglomerate who operates the crash test dummy. So these are the guys who actually decided AUKUS. Obviously, they didn't tell anything about it to the French, who were there at the G7 as well. It's fascinating because it provoked one of the unintended or perhaps intended consequences was to fracture NATO. Number one, fracture NATO. Number two, it fractured the Quad as well, because it's obvious for everybody now that India and Japan, the Asians, are the vassals in Quad. It's an Anglo club, 3 Anglos, and everybody else is vassals. So it's great in a sense because now the game is much clearer. And considering the people who are playing the game or at least strategizing the game, they are so primitive. You can read right away what even before they do it, you will already know what they're doing. So if we can do that, can you imagine Russian intel and Chinese intel, right? So what's going to happen in the long run? It is complicated because now the Chinese are going to have to face a real threat in Australia. Australia now is a real threat to Chinese national security, and the repercussions are going to be massive. We cannot even imagine what is going to be. But the thing is, AUKUS basically is an against China, against Taiwan mechanism. So they're going to have these subs, according to the best projections that we have, between 2036 2040. What's going to happen in the next few years is that Taiwan sooner or later is going to be incorporated by China. Probably, but I would say peacefully, because it's a matter of economic integration, and Dr. Ejaz knows this very, very well. We already have a degree of tech integration between engineers in Taiwan who work in the mainland and vice versa. The economies are interconnected. So it's a geo-economic non-problem. It's going to happen anyway, right?
That's right. Yeah.
So,
Pepe, I have a question for
yeah,
you.
Yes,
but kindly
please.
finish your comment before. You were going to say something.
No. That's it. Basically,
so,
yeah.
My
Go
question
ahead,
was that just 3 days ago, the Chinese lowered some of their forces in one more province of India called the Uttarakhand. So this is not Ladakh, this is not Himachal Pradesh, and it's not Arunachal Pradesh. This is Uttarakhand, which is close between Ladakh and Nepal. And they came down a few kilometers and so forth. Do you think that this was in response to the Indian role in Quad against China?
That's a very good question. We don't know.
And the second question was that how much do you see, how much wherewithal does US or Israel have to goad India into a conflict with Pakistan, to bog down and put fire on the western neighborhoods of China?
Well, considering that they can turn Modi inside out and the people around Modi so easily, Washington and Tel Aviv, I would say we should be worried. No question about it. When are the next elections in India? 2023?
I think 2 years from now. Yeah.
23, nah? So it's still a long way away. Nah? Yeah. And assuming this Hindutva gang would be ejected from power, it will be a service to humanity, I would say.
Right. And I don't think that they can be decommissioned without some kind of direct action against them.
Direct action, yes.
Direct action. I mean, some resistance on ground, because I see these heartbreaking images of different types of minorities, mostly Muslims, but sometimes Christians and Sikhs and others also, that the extreme brutality against them. And so it's that even many of these, these are civilian people. They are not paramilitary forces. They are not military people. They're not, they're regular people, but the amount of venom they have against non-Hindus, I have never seen this in my life.
Right.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen the Hindus and Muslims or Hindu-Sikh tensions in our lifetimes, but I have not seen the amount of venom against all minorities, especially Sikh and Muslims.
Sikh
and Dalits as well,
and Dalits,
2 years ago. Yeah. And so the reason I asked this question, Pepe, is that if the US and the Israelis, the Western partners, can prompt the Indians into attacking Pakistan, then obviously China would become involved in that.
Absolutely.
And if that happened, would that simultaneously spark a conflict on the Taiwan side to give China a two-front war or not? And the other thing is that militarily, what do you think that, because, US has supply bases from Okinawa and South Korea, Philippines, and now Australia. But China, of course, has all of the, its military strategy is land-based and is going to be projecting power onto the sea, while they'll be doing opposite. They would be projecting power from sea onto the Chinese lands. So given the type of technologies that these two countries possess, do you think that the US would actually attack China directly from the sea?
They cannot. No, they can't. They can't, and that's one of the conversations that I'm having for a while with some of my connections in the Beltway, exactly. And they keep telling me the same thing. These people are so incompetent. They cannot organize a withdrawal from Afghanistan. Can you imagine a multi-layered strategy to attack China, even indirectly, as you just mentioned? It just not going to happen. What's going to happen is hybrid war. Hybrid war in so many levels, provocations here and there, flashpoints, But The scenario that you evoked, that India attacking Pakistan, there's well, it's going to be a nuclear war. If that happens, we have a nuclear war in South Asia, and this, you know, and there's no scenario gaming the repercussions of something like this, you know. And I'm sure this is something that I would say the great mediator inside the SCO and BRICS, Putin. This is something that has been trying to tell Modi in no uncertain terms for quite a while. And considering that Modi listens to Putin, that's a completely different story. He respects and he listens to Putin. And Putin knows Russian intelligence, the best intel service on the planet. They know, they gamed all this. And obviously Putin can tell Modi directly, look, if you keep on these provocations, even if they are circumscribed to a little area here, and this thing comes to the crunch, you know what this means, right? And we're not going to let that happen. First of all, because you're part of our club. You're part of two of our main clubs, BRICS and SCO. Second, this is all about Eurasia. It's all about us here. It has nothing to do with foreigners trying to provoke a war between two of us inside our own continent. But once again, coming back to the IQ factor, is Modi fully intellectually equipped to understand what this really means and the people around him? I doubt it. Seriously.
Yeah, and Pepe, you make a good point about this AUKUS. Not only did it marginalize the other members of Quad, I mean, these Asian members, and pretty much let them know that the ultimate club is a white man's club.
It's a white man's club.
It's a white man's club. So the Japanese and the Indians can aspire as much as they'd like to be part of it, but ultimately, but also to the French and others, that this is an Anglo club.
You have no idea, my friends, how absolute. Of course, I cannot say the word here, but how angry the Paris establishment is. But I've never seen this before, ever. This is something that I don't remember, at least in my generation, since de Gaulle. In fact, at the time, de Gaulle, when he was angry, he said, "Oh yeah, bye, I'm leaving." The problem is Macron. Macron is come on, his stature in every possible sense is minimalistic, and he is controlled by basically the banking lobby, so he cannot say anything.
That's right.
But the old Paris establishment, they are, you know, they lost it. They said, how can we get back against les perfides anglo-saxons? The problem is there's nothing they can do. There's absolutely nothing they can do. Okay, they can have an extra contract, like Dassault is selling Mirage to the Indians. That's not much. You know. The problem is they lost a huge contract that multi-year, multi-layer, and there's no turning back. And everybody knows that France is not going to leave NATO, at least under Macron. Depending on what happens in the election next year, this could be very, very interesting. If by any chance we would have, even if it's not Marine Le Pen, and she's not very politically, she's not exactly very bright, but let's say a third way in France, which would probably, I would say would be a very faithful mirror of French public opinion at the moment, which is essentially anti-system, anti-NATO, anti-Brussels. It's very, very important. So something that, if you asked last year, was not like that. The mood inside France changed completely. And now, with the way even the mainstream media, which is controlled by the Paris establishment, of course, is printing every day the scandal of how France was snubbed by the Anglo club. Wow. So this could have a huge repercussion. And the next French leader could pull a de Gaulle. So this is not completely off the
That would be interesting.
That would be very interesting, because then we have the real implosion of NATO. And this is something that my friends in the Beltway already told me in one of their emails. They said, look, we are discussing here, will the French have what it takes to get out of NATO? And many of us believe, yes, in the long run, not now.
And I think if I combine that with Germany's grievances, also with the Western club of the Anglo-Saxons, and who are trying to dissuade them from keeping away from Nord Stream,
Nord Stream 2, exactly.
Nord Stream 2 with Russia. So they are looking at a winter, maybe possibly they have to burn firewood inside Germany.
Absolutely, so, and light candles.
Yes, I mean, so if that push comes to push comes to a shove, then do you think that Germany and France that might actually thinking their own security, Germany and France spearheading an own security delinked from the Atlantic, in which Russia is not declared as an enemy but as a good friend?
Right, and Pepe, I mean, along these lines, I mean, we've been waiting for what. I mean, the Germans so far on this AUKUS thing have been fairly quiet, and also in light of
they have no government.
Right. This is what I was going to say. This
exactly at the moment there's nobody leading Germany at the moment.
Yeah,
it's an absolute disaster, in fact. And we're gonna have if we have a government with the SPD, with the Greens in the government. Oh my God! Because the Greens are not Greens. The Greens are basically a NATO Atlanticist Trojan horse inside Germany.
Absolutely.
It has nothing to do with Greens at all. Right?
Yeah. They were the most hawkish on Afghanistan, in fact.
The most hawkish on Afghanistan, among other issues, of Syria, Afghanistan, Russia, Venezuela, Cuba, everything. So if you listen to the Greens, it's like reading a NATO press release. It's the exact same thing, But now, exactly, you touch, Ejaz, you touched on a very important point, because this could lead the French to try to convince the next German government, look, we need our European protection force, as they call it in Brussels. That's it, completely separate from NATO, which means the final breakup of NATO. NATO is going to be the Brits, the Poles, and those pathetic Baltics.
Right.
It's ridiculous. That's the end of NATO. And obviously the Italians who are watching this with extreme interest are going to say, oh, yes, we want to be part of this as well. Exactly. And Italy is the third most important power in Europe. We can never forget that, even though it's a mess. Just please.
If their security architecture crumbles from NATO to something different, then their development and banking architecture might suffer as well. So, which means that the European Union itself could be in trouble. Of course.
Well, the European Union is already in trouble. You're right, Ejaz, because the European Union is in trouble everywhere in Western Europe. It's not in Eastern Europe because they get free money from Brussels. There's no other reason. The Baltics and Eastern Europe, free cash every month from. They're not going to say anything against Brussels, but the ones who actually sustain that, and that includes the Finns, it includes the Dutch, apart from Germany, France. The anti-Brussels tsunami is growing by the months everywhere. Yeah. So we could see a parallel decapitation process of the EU and NATO.
Right.
No question.
And I think that
I would say this is the hopeful scenario. Just sorry,
hopeful, because this will actually could have a positive impact, or these conditions could lend themselves to the greater Eurasian integration.
Oh, now you're talking about a mega hopeful scenario, Ejaz.
Right.
No, it's beautiful. It's like having a Buddhist illumination. This scenario,
Right.
really. But it's interesting because this is exactly what a guy named Vladimir Putin proposed in 2007, and nobody paid attention.
Yeah.
Fascinating. He proposed, okay, one big free area from Lisbon to Vladivostok. And a few years later, he said exactly the same thing. Who was paying attention? The Chinese.
Yes.
Because the Chinese, the original concept of BRI, of course, it's a Chinese Ministry of Commerce that elaborated the strategy, but they were paying attention to what the Russians had been saying for years before they designed it. It's basically putting on steroids, Lisbon to Vladivostok, BRI. That's it. It includes Africa, includes parts of Latin America as well. It's practically a global BRI, right? But the original idea was not Chinese, was Russian.
That's right. Yeah. Because, Russia from the very beginning, I mean, they realized that they are a Eurasian nation. And
they are exactly.
They have a European element, and now with the change of demographics, Russia realizes that it's becoming more Asian than its percentage of Eurasianism is changing slowly. So it has so much to gain by orienting itself towards, by at least not neglecting Asia, but actually properly integrating with Asia, where the locus of all the world economic focus is. So I think that the Russians are very sagacious, and like you said, Putin is a really, really thoughtful leader. And so if what is happening in Europe recently could actually loosen the Atlantic bonds, European bonds with the Atlantic, and actually integrate them closely with the East.
It's going to be very, very hard, Ejaz and Junaid, because this is something that you said a few minutes ago, Ejaz. The financial architecture of Western dominance is wow. It's massive. It's massive. It's nuclear in its power, and it's going to be very, very hard to dismantle it. It's going to have to be dismantled from the inside by insiders. We know there are some insiders who are seriously considering how to do it. We know that there is a movement already, but China will be instrumental to destroy this old order in terms of forcing energy producers to sell their energy in yuan. I would say this would be the game-changing moment. If it comes to a day where you have a Chinese delegation arriving in Riyadh and saying, okay, from now on, we pay everything you sell in yuan. That's it.
Yeah.
What are they going to say? Because this is what's going to happen with Iran. It's on the way, with Iran. It's what's going to happen with Qatar.
As a response to that development, should it happen, I think that the global deep state will respond by biowarfare.
By warfare, I agree with you completely.
More germs.
Yes.
Because a la Corona. Yeah, this COVID.
Exactly. But a lethal Corona.
Lethal word. Exactly.
Yes.
Right. Well, I mean, this has been an incredible, fascinating discussion, and I think we must do a part 4, because I think we've done parts 1, 2, and 3.
Okay, let's do part 4.
We'll do a part. But just before we conclude, Pepe, in response to Professor Akram, and I know that this is on the minds and exciting people and scaring, frightening people, this idea of a direct confrontation between the United States and China. Now, I just wanted for you to give your comment on what you thought of this Bob Woodward's periodic, these books that come out during every president, in which he claimed that the general contacted.
Was Milley?
Yes, that's right.
Milley called. In fact, apparently he did.
Yeah.
Because Milley and Trump, they were loggerheads all the
right.
time. And
so
Milei
what do you think? What do you think, Pepe? Yeah, Pepe, what do you think that signifies? What do you think that signifies? That the deep state is saying, we won't attack you, but we will continue hybrid warfare.
Yes.
What do you think?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. In fact, your interpretation is perfect. The message is, whatever we decide here at our higher echelons of power, our hybrid war against you continues. Because these are the facts, in fact. And they're going to, and this different, this myriad ways hybrid war is being deployed, it's going to include everything from AUKUS to ISIS-K and everything in between. And once demonization of China because of Uyghurs, Taiwan, Hong Kong, it's you know, the closest inside a laundry machine. And it never, the problem is the laundry machine never stops. So you have the same elements changing position, and the machine keeps going forever. This is the new hybrid war, in fact. And that's the, and it's in a sense, I'm probably going to turn Ejaz upside down now. They are so incompetent, and they are so incapacitated of thinking strategically. This is the only strategy they have. As pitiful as it is, they cannot come up with something more Sun Tzu sophisticated, because they don't. they cannot think in these terms. They cannot think in Bismarck terms. You know, they cannot even think in Machiavel terms. No, these people are, I would say, semi-illiterate, even if they come from Princeton, Harvard, or whatever. You know.
No, I agree with that, actually, because, you know, their essential orientation is destructive. So they make money from wars. They make money for disharmony. They make money from disease. So, you know, Sun Tzu and the other types of, you know, traditional philosophies are constructive because they have a cosmology below them. They're based on spiritual worldviews. But so this is, and you're absolutely right. I think this is, I completely agree with that, that it's the washing machine has to tumble. And so they have no other strategy but to make the world tumble.
True, exactly. And that's why it's, and then we get to the very, very worrying part. This could actually happen in a Dr. Strangelove moment, because there won't be a counterpower near the guy pressing the button to say, guys, let's take a minute and think it over. No, there won't be. There won't be. And that's what makes it so worrying for all of us. And this is something that Putin sees, not only Putin, Shoigu, Patrushev, you know, the deciding circles in Russia, they see this very, very clearly. And they know that Putin already said that many times on the record, the next war is going to be the last one. Everybody knows that. Everybody who studies the issue knows that. And the Russians are prepared. It's in their national security now. If we think that the order came from somewhere to attack us, we're going to attack everybody, including the guys who issue the orders. So the Americans are warned that if they try anything, they will disappear as a nation. Simple as that. The problem is the Dr. Strangeloves over there. They believe in this absolutely ridiculous, absurd concept of limited nuclear war. The next war is not going to be limited nuclear war. It's going to be a worldwide nuclear war. Yeah.
It's like our smart bombs, Pepe.
Yes, exactly. That's a very good analogy. Yeah.
Okay, gentlemen. I am incredibly grateful to both of you. You have taken so much time to be with us, and it's so late there. I'm really wishing both of you pleasant sleep, dreams of geopolitics that we've been discussing. And I very much look forward to having both of you again for, like I said, parts 4, 5, and 6 combined.
No, for me, it's an enormous pleasure to be with both of you, really. For
Same
me,
here,
it makes
same
my
here.
day, week, year, decade, you know. Thank you, guys, really.
Likewise. Thank you, Pepe. Thank you, Professor
Thank
Akram.
you. Thank
And
you.
I will
Thank you.
continue hobnobbing here in the Beltway. Take care, both of you. Take care to all of
Thank
our
you.
viewers.
Take care, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.